The galaxy had always been a place of order. The Galactic Council, made up of the universe's most powerful and advanced species, ruled from a monumental seat of power, nestled at the heart of the Milky Way. Their authority was absolute, their influence unquestionable. For centuries, they had shaped the galaxy, maintaining peace and stability by quelling any signs of rebellion with an iron grip. They viewed themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, the final authority in all things cosmic. It was under this banner of control that they dismissed humanity. To them, Earth was a speck, a small planet with a species of little consequence. Humans had not yet reached the stars in any meaningful way. Their primitive technology was laughable, their politics fragmented, and their culture chaotic. In the eyes of the Council, they were nothing more than a fleeting anomaly, something that would either be absorbed or extinguished in time. But the signal from humanity came with a clarity that shook the foundation of the Council's belief in their own superiority. At first, it seemed insignificant, a minor disruption in the vast sea of galactic communications, perhaps a rogue transmission, or an accidental burst of radio waves from a distant human colony. Nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. Yet, as the Council's technicians analyzed it further, they realized this was no mistake. Humanity had done something no one had expected. They had established a fleet in the farthest reaches of space, and it was on the move. The fleet, a coalition of the Earth's most advanced military and exploratory vessels, was heading straight for the heart of the Council's domain. The Council convened in an emergency meeting, their long fingers tapping the surfaces of holographic consoles. Alien species with varying features, from insectoid to crystalline, looked to their leaders for answers. What did this mean? Was this some sort of miscommunication, a challenge to their dominance? As the leaders bickered and speculated, there was an undercurrent of tension. A realization began to grow among them, something they had failed to see before. Humanity wasn't just a primitive species. It was adapting, learning, and evolving at an unprecedented rate. But this fleet, this unexpected threat, was more than just a military campaign. The humans had a message, one that no one in the galaxy could ignore. Far from the Council's grasp, Captain Ryder of the human fleet stood at the helm of the flagship, Liberty's Resolve. He watched the stars pass by, his thoughts focused on the mission ahead. The human fleet had been silent for months, moving through the void, unnoticed by the Council. They had trained, they had prepared, and now they were ready. The orders had been clear: strike with precision, but make it unforgettable. The Council's arrogance had to be shattered, not by brute force alone, but by a demonstration of humanity's will. Ryder knew the stakes were higher than anyone could understand. He could already feel the weight of history pressing on his shoulders, but he couldn't afford to second-guess himself. If they succeeded, humanity would be known throughout the galaxy, not as a weak species to be wiped out, but as a force to be reckoned with. As the human fleet approached the edge of the Council's territory, an eerie silence hung in the air. Every ship was in position. Every crew member was ready. But there was something else, something unseen, that fueled their determination. It was a shared belief that humanity was meant to be more than just another conquered species. They were ready to prove that the universe hadn't seen anything like them before. The Council, still skeptical, prepared for a countermeasure, expecting to crush whatever was coming their way with ease. But the humans weren't coming to be crushed. They weren't coming to fight in the way the Council expected. They were coming to deliver a blow so powerful that the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. As the fleet moved into position, Captain Ryder gave the order. The first shot would be fired, not as a weapon, but as a message that would echo across the stars, reverberating through the minds of every alien in the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they were no longer to be underestimated. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity. They had dismissed Earth as a backwater planet, its inhabitants too fractured, too naive to make a mark on the galaxy. Yet, As the first shot from humanity's fleet pierced the void and ripped into the outskirts of Council space, they were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Humanity wasn't just a fleeting anomaly. The humans had evolved in ways that the Council hadn't anticipated, and their strength lay not in sheer numbers or advanced technology, but in their sheer determination and resilience. In the heart of the Liberty's resolve, Captain Ryder stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays. The initial strike had been successful. A powerful surge of energy had destroyed the first outer defense stations, sending shockwaves across the Council's network. It wasn't just a victory, it was a declaration. The humans weren't here to be crushed, they were here to show the galaxy what they were capable of. Yet, Ryder knew that the Council would soon respond, and the true test of humanity's resolve was just beginning. What the Council didn't understand, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its advanced ships or innovative technology. It was the human spirit. Humans didn't fight with calculated precision like the cold and emotionless species of the Council. They fought with passion, with the will to survive, and with an unshakable belief in their own potential. It was that belief that had driven humanity to the stars, and it was that same belief that would carry them through this fight, no matter how impossible it seemed. As Ryder walked the corridors of the flagship, his mind raced with the implications of the attack. They had only just begun, and already they had done what no one thought was possible, stirred the prideful Council into action. Yet, Ryder couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of uncertainty. What was the true cost of this battle? Humanity was fighting not just for survival, but for the future of the entire galaxy. But was this the right path? Would their victory come at too great a cost? The fleet's next move was already in motion. The humans had a secret weapon, a fleet of ships that had been designed in the darkest corners of human ingenuity, using alien technology scavenged from lost wars and forgotten worlds. These ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, combining the raw power of human innovation with the deadly precision of technology that had been stolen from the very beings they now sought to defy. The weapon wasn't just a tool for destruction. It was a symbol of humanity's unyielding drive to survive and to take control of its own fate. But even as Ryder knew they had the upper hand, he was acutely aware of the danger that came with wielding such power. There were risks, and every choice they made would push them closer to the edge. Back at the Council's headquarters, panic began to spread. Their analysts had been watching humanity's movements closely, and now, as the humans struck again, their unease turned into full-blown fear. The Council had prepared for the possibility of rebellion, but they had never expected something so calculated, so brutal, and so relentless. The humans were not only attacking with their advanced technology, they were attacking with the force of their will, the sheer power of their determination. Despite the growing tension, the Council refused to believe that this was the beginning of something more than just an isolated attack. They saw humanity as a threat to be crushed, a species that had dared to challenge their rule. They failed to grasp the reality. Humanity's fight wasn't about revenge or conquering the galaxy. It was about survival. The Council's own arrogance had bred a blind spot, and now they were reaping the consequences. On the Liberty's resolve, Captain Ryder faced the difficult reality of their situation. The hidden fleet, the one that had been carefully crafted in secret, was ready to strike. These were the most dangerous ships humanity had ever built, designed to infiltrate the Council's strongest defenses and strike at their very core. But they were untested, and Ryder knew that if they failed, humanity's fleet could be destroyed in one catastrophic sweep. The risks were enormous, but the payoff was even greater. As Ryder addressed his crew, he could see the weight of the mission etched in their faces. They were no longer just soldiers. They were the symbol of humanity's defiance, of everything their species had fought for. The moment had arrived. They couldn't turn back now. This wasn't just a battle against the Council. It was a battle for humanity's place in the galaxy. The hidden fleet, now in motion, was poised to strike at the heart of the Council's defenses. It wasn't just about destroying their warships or crippling their infrastructure. This was about sending a message that the Council would never forget. Humanity had fought its way to the stars, and they weren't going to let anyone stand in their way. As the fleet prepared for the next stage of their mission, Ryder couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something far larger than a military victory. The true war was not just about defeating the Council. It was about changing the very way the galaxy viewed humanity. It was a fight for respect, for recognition, and for the future of a species that had long been overlooked. But as the fleet approached the heart of the Council's territory, Ryder couldn't help but wonder, would they succeed in their mission, or would they be the ones to fall? The silence of space was broken by the thunderous roar of humanity's fleet as it surged toward the heart of the Galactic Council's domain. Each ship in the fleet was a testament to human ingenuity, designed not only to survive, but to thrive in the chaos of battle. The humans had caught the Council off guard, and the first wave had been a resounding success. The Council's defenses had faltered under the unexpected onslaught, and their complacency had quickly turned into panic. But the war was far from over, and humanity's fleet knew that this was only the beginning. Captain Ryder stood at the command center of Liberty's resolve, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The first strike had been devastating, but it had also drawn the attention of the Council's most formidable warriors. Now, the true test awaited them. The Council's military forces were vast and powerful, and they were gathering in full force. Humanity's fleet would have to fight through wave after wave of elite soldiers and weapons of unimaginable power. The tension aboard the flagship was palpable. Ryder could feel it in his bones, the weight of responsibility, the stakes of the battle. The first wave had been a success, but this next phase of the mission would determine everything. The Council had underestimated humanity's ability to wage war, but they had no idea what was coming next. Humanity wasn't just using weapons, it was using tactics, cunning, and sheer will to break the Council's hold on the galaxy. The human fleet had become more than just a military force. It had become a symbol of defiance, of resistance against an oppressive regime that had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist for far too long. The soldiers aboard each ship were not just fighting for victory. They were fighting for the survival of their species. And as the fleet pushed deeper into Council space, they were beginning to realize that the stakes were even higher than they had originally thought. As Ryder watched the progress of the fleet on the command console, his thoughts drifted to the battle to come. The hidden fleet, the one that had been engineered with a mix of alien technology and human ingenuity, was ready to strike. These ships had been designed for one purpose: to infiltrate the Council's most secure locations and disable their key military assets. They weren't just designed to fight. They were designed to win, no matter the cost. The Council's military leaders had underestimated the humans in every way. They had assumed that humanity would fold under pressure, that they would crumble in the face of overwhelming force. What the Council didn't understand was that humanity had always survived against the odds. It was in their nature to push back when threatened, to rise above, and keep moving forward. And now, as the fleet made its final approach to the Council's flagship, they were ready to show the galaxy just how far that determination could go. As the battle unfolded, Ryder's mind was focused on the larger picture. The Council had always thought of themselves as the ultimate power in the galaxy, but humanity was changing that perception with every passing moment. The ships of the human fleet were relentless, striking at the heart of the Council's defenses with precision and force. The Council had no idea how to counteract this new form of warfare. Their most advanced weaponry was being rendered useless by humanity's tactics, and their elite forces were being picked off one by one. The hidden fleet, the one that had been constructed in secret over the course of many years, was now being deployed. These ships were the most advanced the humans had ever built, capable of taking on the Council's strongest warships and disabling them from the inside. But there was a catch. The ships were untested, and their power came with a risk. Every time they used their advanced technology, they were pushing the limits of what was possible. There was no telling how long the ships would hold up under the stress of battle. Every maneuver, every shot fired, could be the one that caused the ships to break apart. But Ryder knew that there was no turning back. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the moment when humanity would prove that it was a force to be reckoned with. The battle was fierce, and the stakes were higher than ever. As the human fleet engaged the Council's flagship, the intensity of the conflict escalated to new levels. Explosions lit up the sky as ships from both sides exchanged fire, and the battlefield became a chaotic dance of destruction. Ryder's thoughts were interrupted by an alert. The hidden fleet had made it to the heart of the Council's defenses. The time had come to unleash the full power of humanity's secret weapon. The ships, sleek and deadly, moved through the void with unparalleled speed, heading straight for the heart of the Council's flagship. Ryder's pulse quickened as he watched the fleet's movements on the console. This was it, the moment of truth. As the hidden fleet descended on the flagship, Ryder's heart raced. The Council's flagship, a massive ship that was the pride of their military, was now within reach. The humans were closing in, and the final blow was about to be struck. Ryder's hand hovered over the command console, his mind focused on the task at hand. If they succeeded, the Council's power would be shattered. If they failed, humanity would lose everything. The first wave of hidden ships made contact with the flagship's outer defenses, and Ryder watched as the battle intensified. The Council's forces scrambled to respond, but they were no match for the cunning of humanity's strategy. Ryder's heart pounded in his chest as the battle raged on, the outcome uncertain. As the fleet continued its assault on the Council's flagship, Ryder couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about victory, it was about sending a message. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The Council, once so certain of their dominance, was now fighting for their survival against an enemy they had never truly understood. The hidden fleet was doing its job. The Council's flagship was beginning to falter. Ryder knew that they were on the verge of something monumental. The outcome of the battle was still unknown, but one thing was certain. Humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated. And as the final blow approached, the galaxy would learn that humanity's resolve was stronger than anything the Council had ever known. The battle for the galaxy's future was far from over. As humanity's fleet continued its relentless advance into the heart of the Council's domain, the space between the two forces was filled with chaos and destruction. The once proud, untouchable Council was beginning to buckle under the pressure of an enemy they had long underestimated. Their warships, formidable and powerful, were now vulnerable to humanity's strategic genius. The tactics they had relied upon for centuries were no longer enough. They hadn't prepared for a species that fought with heart, with fire, with the unyielding belief that they had a right to stand among the stars. Captain Ryder watched the scene unfold on the command console of Liberty's Resolve. His thoughts were consumed by the weight of what was happening. The Council's flagship, the pinnacle of their military power, was teetering on the edge of collapse. The hidden fleet had struck deep into its core, disabling key systems, and now, with each passing moment, the damage was becoming irreversible. But as the Council's forces reeled from the attack, they had one final card to play, a desperate move that could turn the tide of the entire war. The Council's retaliation came in the form of their ultimate weapon, a devastating superweapon hidden deep within the heart of their flagship. It had been designed as a last resort, a doomsday device that could wipe out entire fleets in a single blow. For centuries, the Council had kept its existence a secret, fearing that one day it might be needed to put down a threat that could not be controlled. Now, that time had come. As the Liberty's Resolve and the rest of humanity's fleet continued to close in on the Council's flagship, Ryder received an encrypted transmission, a message that sent a chill through his spine. It was a warning from one of the human spies embedded within the Council's ranks. The superweapon was about to be activated, and if it was fired, it could annihilate the entire human fleet in an instant. The message was clear. Humanity had only one chance to stop it. Ryder's heart raced as he quickly analyzed the situation. The weapon was in the hands of the Council's most loyal generals, and it was now on the verge of activation. Ryder knew that their mission had shifted. It was no longer just about crippling the Council's defenses or sending a message. It was about survival. The weapon had to be destroyed before it could be used. But the question was how. The human fleet was too spread out, and the flagship was too heavily protected. If they attacked blindly, they would lose everything. They needed a plan, one that was as daring as it was dangerous. He immediately called for a meeting with his top commanders, who gathered around the central table. Tension hung thick in the air. There was no time to waste. Ryder outlined the situation, and the room fell silent as everyone processed the gravity of the situation. The superweapon had the power to change the course of the war in an instant, and the Council was prepared to use it to wipe humanity out for good. But Ryder wasn't about to let that happen. He had come too far, and the fleet had sacrificed too much to let this be their end. After a tense pause, one of Ryder's commanders spoke up. "We can't just fight our way in. We'll never make it through the defenses. But if we can create a distraction, draw their fire away from the flagship's core, we might have a chance to sabotage the weapon from the inside." Ryder nodded, his mind racing. A distraction. It was risky, but it could work. The human fleet had proven time and again that it was capable of thinking outside the box. If they could buy enough time, they could infiltrate the flagship and destroy the superweapon before it could be used. The plan was set in motion. The human fleet would split into two groups. One group would engage the Council's forces head-on, drawing their attention and forcing them to concentrate their fire on the decoy ships. The second group, including Liberty's resolve, would attempt to infiltrate the flagship and destroy the weapon. It was a high-stakes gamble, but it was the only option left. As the fleets moved into position, Ryder felt a surge of determination. He had come to this point with one goal in mind: to ensure humanity's survival. But now, with the Council's weapon threatening everything they had fought for, the stakes were higher than ever. There was no room for failure. The battle was intense, as humanity's ships swarmed the Council's forces, engaging them in a fierce dogfight. The decoy ships drew fire, taking heavy damage, but managing to keep the Council's attention focused on them. Meanwhile, Ryder's flagship and its companions moved swiftly and silently through the chaos, their path obscured by the flurry of combat around them. As Liberty's resolve approached the Council's flagship, the crew braced for the most dangerous phase of the mission. Ryder stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the target ahead. The flagship was massive, its defenses formidable. Every sensor on the ship was alive with activity, warning of incoming attacks, but Ryder's focus remained unwavering. This was the moment they had trained for, the moment when every sacrifice, every risk, would be justified. The infiltration teams boarded the flagship under the cover of the ongoing battle. They moved with purpose, their eyes set on the superweapon's location. As they navigated through the labyrinthine corridors, they encountered fierce resistance from the Council's elite forces. These were the best soldiers the Council had to offer, and they were willing to die to protect their weapon. But the human soldiers, driven by the knowledge of what was at stake, fought back with everything they had. The teams worked quickly, planting charges, disabling security systems, and making their way deeper into the heart of the flagship. Every second counted. The closer they got to the weapon, the more intense the battle became. The Council's forces fought tooth and nail to prevent them from reaching their target, but the human soldiers were relentless. They had come too far to back down now. In the command center, Ryder's heart raced as the seconds ticked by. The countdown was underway. He had to trust his soldiers to do their part. The fate of humanity, the future of the galaxy, rested in their hands. As the final charge was planted, the human team made a daring escape, narrowly avoiding an ambush as the superweapon began to power up. Ryder gave the order, and within moments, the charges detonated, sending a shockwave through the flagship. The superweapon was destroyed. The Council's ultimate weapon had been neutralized. It was a victory, but not without its cost. The flagship, heavily damaged, began to drift aimlessly in space. The battle was far from over, but humanity had delivered a blow the Council would never recover from. As the dust settled, Ryder knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never see humanity as weak again. They had fought with everything they had, and they had won. The aftermath of the battle was nothing short of chaotic. The Council's flagship was now a shell of its former self, drifting through space, heavily damaged and crippled by the destruction of its superweapon. The shockwaves of the explosion had rippled through their command networks, severing key communication lines, and the once unified Council fleet was now fragmented, struggling to reorganize in the face of the unexpected blow. Humanity had struck a devastating blow, but the cost of that victory had been immense. Lives had been lost, ships destroyed, and the future of humanity still hung in the balance. Captain Ryder stood on the bridge of Liberty's Resolve, looking out at the debris field that had once been a symbol of the Council's might. The ship's hull was scared by battle, the engines barely holding together after the intense firefight. The human fleet had managed to push through, but there was no denying that they had paid a heavy price. Ryder's thoughts were a whirlwind. The mission wasn't over yet. Humanity had scored a victory, but the fight was far from finished. The Council would retaliate, and they would retaliate hard. They had to prepare for the next wave. His mind kept drifting back to the soldiers, the men and women who had fought and died to get to this point. They weren't just soldiers. They were symbols of humanity's unbreakable will. Every time it seemed like they were out of options, they found a way. Every setback only fueled their resolve to push forward. And now, as Ryder looked out at the remnants of the Council's fleet, he realized that the humans had proven something to the galaxy. They had proven that they were not to be underestimated. They had proven that, despite the odds, they could stand tall. Ryder's thoughts were interrupted by the sharp sound of an incoming transmission. A voice crackled over the comms, the unmistakable tone of one of his senior officers. "Captain, we've got a problem. We've received intelligence from the front lines. The Council has regrouped faster than anticipated. Their reinforcements are already on the way." Ryder's heart sank. He had known that the victory would be temporary, but he hadn't expected the Council to recover so quickly. The attack on their superweapon had crippled them, but not for long. They had resources, they had technology, and most importantly, they had pride. And when a proud enemy is wounded, they are often the most dangerous. The enemy reinforcements were coming, faster than anyone had predicted. A massive fleet, larger than anything humanity had faced so far, was on its way to reclaim what they had lost. The Council wasn't just trying to win. They were trying to reassert their dominance. And they were bringing everything they had with them. Ryder knew that the coming battle would be the most intense yet. It wouldn't just be a fight for survival. It would be a fight for the very future of humanity. "Prepare for battle," Ryder ordered, his voice unwavering, despite the mounting pressure. "We're not backing down. We've made our mark, and we're going to make sure the Council knows that we're here to stay." The human fleet quickly shifted into formation, rallying around Liberty's Resolve, readying itself for the oncoming storm. They had faced overwhelming odds before, but this would be unlike anything they had ever experienced. The enemy was coming, and this time, the Council wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating humanity again. They were bringing their full might to bear, and Ryder knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of the galaxy. As the human fleet braced for impact, Ryder found himself once again reflecting on what was at stake. They weren't just fighting to protect themselves anymore. They were fighting for a future where humanity wasn't a footnote in the history of the galaxy, a future where their place among the stars wasn't dictated by the whims of the Council or any other oppressive force. It was a future where humanity could stand on its own, a future where they were free to choose their destiny. The Council had long held that power, an unchallenged rule over the galaxy that stretched across countless worlds. But humanity had cracked that foundation, breaking through the arrogance and the complacency of those who had ruled with an iron fist. Now the question was whether humanity could hold on to what they had started, or whether they would be crushed under the weight of their own defiance. Hours passed as the human fleet prepared for the Council's retaliation. Ryder and his commanders had spent every moment since receiving the intelligence formulating new strategies, evaluating every option. But in his heart, Ryder knew that there was only one way this would end. Humanity would either win or lose everything in this fight. There would be no middle ground, no retreat, no surrender. The galaxy would be forever changed, one way or another. As the enemy fleet came into view, Ryder gave the order, "Engage." The two fleets collided with a force that shook the very fabric of space. A hail of energy blasts, missiles, and ships shrieked through the void, as the Council's reinforcements unleashed everything they had on humanity. The sky was alight with the destruction of ships. Council warships falling one after another, but humanity's fleet was taking hits too. Their ships were sturdy, resilient, but they weren't invulnerable. Each blow to their fleet cost lives, cost precious resources, but there was no turning back now. Ryder's heart pounded as he commanded his crew through the chaos, making split-second decisions, keeping the fleet together in the face of the overwhelming force bearing down on them. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. Each move was a gamble. But even as the odds stacked against them, even as it seemed like the enemy might overrun them at any moment, Ryder knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity would not give up. Not now. Not ever. The battle raged on, hours bleeding into each other, until Ryder's eyes fell upon a new development, something unexpected. The Council's reinforcements, despite their sheer size and power, were beginning to falter. Their fleet was losing momentum. Ships were beginning to retreat. Ryder couldn't believe his eyes. Was this really happening? He didn't have time to process the implications. The fight wasn't over yet, and he couldn't afford to lose focus. But something was clear. Humanity was winning. Against all odds, they were standing their ground. The Council had underestimated them. They had thought they could simply crush humanity with their overwhelming numbers and superior firepower, but they had been wrong. And now, with the Council's fleet beginning to pull back, Ryder could feel it. The shift in the tide. Humanity had proven they were more than just a passing threat. They had proven they were a force to be reckoned with. And this was only the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again. The victory over the Council's reinforcements was hard-earned, but the relief was only fleeting. As humanity's fleet stood amidst the remnants of the enemy, with battered ships and the lingering echoes of battle, Ryder knew that this moment of triumph was just a temporary respite. The Council had been forced to retreat, but their retreat didn't mean surrender. It didn't mean that humanity had won the war. It meant the next phase was imminent, and it would be even more brutal than what they had already endured. Ryder stood at the command center, staring out at the vast expanse of space, his mind racing. The victory had been impressive, but the Council was far from finished. They were wounded, yes, but they were not a species to be underestimated. Their pride had been damaged, and that meant they would fight even harder to reclaim their dominance. The question now was whether humanity had enough strength to keep pushing forward. Could they break the Council for good, or would the cost of their resistance be too high? The human fleet was in disarray. While they had struck the Council a crushing blow, they had lost many ships, many soldiers, and many valuable resources. The remaining fleet was still formidable, but it was far from the force it had been at the outset. Ryder knew that the coming weeks would be critical. They needed to regroup, to replenish their forces, and to prepare for whatever the Council had in store next. Despite the mounting pressure, Ryder had a sense of something else, something more. The human fleet had proven that it could face impossible odds and still come out victorious. Every soldier, every officer aboard each ship had fought with unwavering determination. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy, for the chance to reshape the future on their own terms. The fleet would have to make its next move quickly. Ryder's intelligence reports indicated that the Council wasn't just regrouping. They were preparing for something catastrophic. New ships were being constructed, advanced weapons were being deployed, and rumors of a new weapon, even more powerful than the last, had started to circulate. Humanity's victory over the reinforcements had bought them some time, but not much. The Council was more dangerous now than they had ever been. Ryder called for a strategic meeting with his senior officers. As the commanders filed into the war room, their faces were drawn and weary from the unrelenting strain of the battle. But beneath the exhaustion, there was something else, a quiet resolve, a belief that they could still win. Ryder could see it in their eyes. They weren't ready to give up. They weren't ready to surrender. The next phase of this war is going to be unlike anything we've faced so far. Ryder began, his voice calm but firm. The Council has been wounded, but they've only become more dangerous. We're going to need every resource we have if we're going to survive what's coming. He paused, looking around at the faces of the men and women who had stood with him through every battle. But we've already proven something to them. We've shown them that humanity won't back down, that we won't be pushed around. And now we need to make sure they understand that the galaxy doesn't belong to them anymore. There was a murmur of agreement among the commanders. Ryder's words, though harsh, struck a chord with them. They had already lost so much. They had already risked everything. But they had also gained something invaluable: the respect of the galaxy's most powerful and ruthless faction. It was a dangerous respect, but it was respect nonetheless. We've got one shot at this, Ryder continued. We need to hit them where it hurts the most, at the heart of their war machine. If we can cripple their supply lines, if we can take out their new weapons before they're fully deployed, we can turn the tide for good. The room fell into a heavy silence as everyone considered the enormity of the mission ahead. It would be dangerous, it would be costly, and there was no guarantee of success. But it was their only option. Humanity had already proven that they could take on the Council head-on. Now they needed to use every advantage they had to win the war once and for all. As the fleet began to organize for the next strike, Ryder couldn't help but think about the future. It wasn't just about defeating the Council anymore. It was about building something better, something that could last. Humanity had earned the right to stand on its own, to shape its own destiny. But that came with a responsibility to ensure that the future they fought for was one of peace, not endless war. The journey had started with an invasion, with an attack on the Council's might. But as the war continued, Ryder saw it for what it truly was, a struggle for freedom, for self-determination. If humanity could survive the coming trials, if they could defeat the Council once and for all, then the galaxy would be forever changed. Ryder's thoughts were interrupted by a new transmission. His face hardened as the message came through. It was an encrypted signal, a warning from an unknown source. The Council was preparing their final assault, an assault that would bring the war to its ultimate conclusion. The message was brief, but the meaning was clear. If humanity didn't act now, if they didn't strike first, the Council's new weapon would end the war in their favor. They would crush humanity in a single stroke. The urgency of the situation hit Ryder like a physical blow. They had no time to waste. The final battle was approaching, and everything would be decided in the next few days. The Council would either break or humanity would fall. There was no middle ground, no second chances. Ryder looked around at his commanders, his heart filled with the weight of the moment. "This is it," he said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future of our species. We fight, and we win, or we fight, and we die. But we don't go down without a fight." The fleet was ready. Humanity was ready. Ryder knew that whatever the Council threw at them, they would face it together. They would not yield. They would not surrender. The final strike was coming, and they would make sure that it was the Council's last. As Liberty's resolve and the rest of the fleet prepared for their final assault, Ryder couldn't help but feel a sense of clarity. The war had started as a desperate struggle for survival, but it had evolved into something much more. It was a fight for freedom, for a future that no one had the right to take away from them. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The Council would soon learn that humanity had more than just survival on its mind. It had the fire to win. The final confrontation loomed on the horizon, a moment that would shape the destiny of the galaxy. Ryder and his fleet were positioned on the outer edges of Council-controlled space, the vastness of the dark expanse before them feeling more oppressive than ever. The time for hesitation had passed. Humanity had no choice but to press forward. They were ready, but deep down, Ryder could feel the weight of uncertainty bearing down on him. This was the turning point, the culmination of everything they had fought for. In a few short hours, they would either win their freedom or lose everything they had gained. Every officer on the Bridge of Liberty's resolve understood the magnitude of this moment. The air crackled with tension, the quiet buzz of the systems keeping them alive in the vast void of space the only sound. Ryder's crew worked tirelessly, adjusting weapon systems, finalizing strategic maneuvers, and ensuring the fleet's formation was intact. The pressure was immense, but Ryder had seen this crew operate under the most dire of circumstances. There was no fear. They knew what they had to do, and they knew it would require everything they had left. As the fleet moved toward the heart of the Council's last remaining stronghold, the final weapon, their most powerful weapon, came into view. The Council's flagship, the Omni-class dreadnought, loomed like a shadow in the distance, a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of wiping out entire fleets in a single blow. Its very presence sent ripples of dread through the remaining ships of humanity's fleet. The stakes had never been higher. The Council had constructed this weapon for one purpose: to ensure their unchallenged dominance. And now it would be used to crush the last remaining resistance. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Harrell, one of Ryder's most trusted officers, breaking through the tense silence. "We've detected a large-scale energy buildup. It's the weapon. It's charging." Ryder's eyes narrowed. The time was almost here. If they didn't strike now, the fleet would be obliterated. He could feel his heartbeat quicken as he mentally prepared for the final assault. There was no turning back now. The mission they had embarked on had cost them so much already. The bloodshed, the sacrifice, the lives lost, all of it had led them to this moment. He thought of the soldiers who had fought alongside him, their faces etched in his memory. They had stood tall against impossible odds. Now it was his turn to lead them to victory. "Prepare the fleet for evasive maneuvers," Ryder ordered, his voice firm. "We move in, fast and hard. No hesitation." As the fleet moved forward, the Omni-class dreadnought fired its first salvo, and Ryder watched as the energy blasts shot across the stars, striking several ships in the human fleet. The explosions lit up the void of space like a series of supernovae, but the human ships kept their formation, taking the hits and pushing forward with relentless precision. The fleet's shields were holding, but Ryder knew they wouldn't last much longer under this kind of sustained assault. The dreadnought fired again, its deadly weapon charging with each second, and Ryder felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had seen this weapon in action before. A single shot was enough to turn the tide of the entire war. But humanity was not going to back down. Not now. Not ever. "Deploy all remaining fighters," Ryder commanded. "We need to distract that damn thing long enough to get in close. We can't let it fire again." The fighters scrambled from the hangar base, a flurry of small ships darting toward the dreadnought to buy humanity's fleet the precious moments they needed. The dogfights between human and Council ships erupted in the sky, explosions and near misses lighting up the dark expanse. Ryder watched as the fighters engaged in their high-speed skirmishes, keeping the Council's attention away from the main fleet. But the real battle was about to begin. Ryder knew that only one shot at victory remained. With his fleet closing in, Ryder gave the order: "All ships, prepare to engage. We go in full force. We take that thing down, or we die trying." The battle became a blur of motion. The human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing as they dodged the dreadnought's devastating fire. Ryder's heart raced in his chest as he gave commands to his ship's gunners, their precision targeting key weaknesses in the dreadnought's hull. Each strike against the enemy felt like a small victory, but they were running out of time. The dreadnought fired again, the energy beams slicing through the darkness with deadly accuracy, and Ryder's ship shuddered from the impact. "Damage report," Ryder barked, though he could already feel the damage beneath his feet. "We've lost auxiliary power to the forward shields." A technician shouted back, urgency in her voice. "We're losing hull integrity on Deck 6. But Ryder didn't flinch. He had been in worse situations before. This was the final push, the one that would either make or break everything they had fought for. They were close now, close enough that he could almost taste the victory. The dreadnought's energy cannon was primed for another strike, but Ryder knew that if they didn't strike first, they would be wiped out. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair as he prepared to give the final order. "Launch the boarding teams," Ryder commanded, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We take that ship from the inside." The human ships accelerated, breaking formation and charging toward the dreadnought with a fury unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Ryder's ship led the charge, cutting through enemy defenses with brutal efficiency. The dreadnought's gunners tried desperately to repel the assault, but it was clear that they had underestimated humanity's resolve. The human fleet had already proven that they could overcome seemingly impossible odds, and now they were proving it once more. As the boarding teams made their way onto the dreadnought, Ryder's ship fired one final shot. It hit the heart of the dreadnought's central core, a shot that would have been impossible just hours before. The explosion ripped through the ship, shaking the entire battlefield. The dreadnought trembled, its engines faltering as a chain reaction began inside the ship. Ryder watched as the once mighty warship began to disintegrate from the inside out, its destruction sending shockwaves across the galaxy. Victory was within their grasp, but Ryder's heart sank. The dreadnought's destruction was only the beginning. The war was far from over. The Council would not surrender so easily. There was still more to fight for, still more to prove. But as the human fleet stood victorious in the wake of the battle, Ryder felt a surge of hope. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had struck a blow so powerful that the galaxy would remember it for centuries to come. The fight for survival, for freedom, and for a future of their own choosing had been won. But Ryder knew that the real victory had only just begun. The Council was broken, their grip on the galaxy shattered. Humanity had made its mark. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with the rise of a new power. A power forged in the fires of war, a power that would no longer bow to any other, a power that would no longer be ignored. And as Ryder stood on the bridge of liberty's resolve, gazing at the remnants of the battle that had defined humanity's future, he knew one thing above all else. Humanity's place in the stars was no longer a question. They had earned it.